You're listening to The Flickcast, a pop culture podcast about stuff nerds love. I am Chris Ulrich, and with me always, of course, is Joe Dilworth. Joe, hello, sir.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. I am well. Thank you very much for asking. That is kind of you.
Oh, well, yes, and thank you for asking as well. I'm a little chilly today because we're under quite a bit of snow and ice in the Great Pacific Northwest. But by the time anybody hears this, which is only in a couple days, it'll all be gone. So we'll be fine.
Yeah, we have ice too in Austin. It's very weird, but I went out and took some photos of it because I haven't taken photos in months, and I thought, hey, you know what? Icicles are cool. I'm going to get a photo, and that's very trite of me, but I'm going to do it anyway because I don't care. I'm an artist, man. Don't mess with me. No. Nah, I actually took them in black and white too, because I do shoot film, as people might know. But anyway,
you do, and you're quite good at it, I must say.
Oh well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah. So I wanted to say before we start, I want to say thank you to everybody who's gone to Apple Podcasts, for example, and rated the show and given us a review. We really appreciate that.
Yes.
And if you want to go keep doing that, that's great. And if you want to find us on the socials at the Flickcast, and we have a Patreon still. TheFlickcast.com. Nope, that's not where the Patreon is. The Patreon is at patreon.com/TheFlickcast. But we also have a website called TheFlickcast.com, which has got more content now, which we started posting. So that's pretty cool. So go check that out. And you can find Joe and I online. I'm at Chris U, and he's at What Joe Writes.
Yeah.
And we're doing this at the beginning of the show sometimes now because I feel like by the time we get to the end, people are so tired, like after last week's episode where it's like an hour and a half, you're like, nope, I'm not listening to anything. I don't want to hear this ever again.
Well, and that, on top of that, too, we are getting very close to launching our own Discord server. So we figure we'd kind of start the discourse
Oh, that was good. Very good.
at the beginning of the show and get people engaged. So, definitely jump into that when we get that going. In the meantime, though, reach out to us on the socials and give us some feedback. We are inviting you into our home to participate in this show.
The virtual home. Yeah, don't actually come to my house, please.
Yeah, no, don't show up. I'll call the cops. But no, I won't.
Yeah, I live in Texas. I'm allowed to shoot people that come to the front door.
Oh,
no,
that's
wait, I
true.
would never
Yeah,
do
you
that.
are.
No, I would never do that. That's not even funny. But yes, we do appreciate the feedback. We do appreciate the reviews and the ratings on Apple Podcasts, especially because that helps juke the algorithm, as it were.
Yes.
So thank you for that, and feel free to when the Discord comes, it's coming soon. You can come and chat with us, and we don't know what we're planning exactly for that yet, but it's going to be fun. So thank you for listening, and
It'll be
now
a
we'll
hoot.
get to the it'll be a hoot. Yeah, we'll get to the show now. I hesitate to bring this up because, as Joe knows, and as we both know, and as a lot of people know who are listening to the show that are fans of this particular person, it's unfortunate when you find out negative things about one of your. I mean, I don't want to say heroes, but I respected his work over the years, and I was a big fan. And it's difficult to find out that people are pieces of shit, apparently. And
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it like that, but it's true. I'm talking about Joss Whedon. I don't want to get too deep into it, but there's a lot of stuff that's come to light recently from Charisma Carpenter and Michelle Trachtenberg in particular that is really disappointing and disturbing. And I'm not saying if true, I assume it is probably true, and that's super unfortunate. And I feel bad for them that they had to deal with any of that kind of thing. But it's just unfortunate. So I keep saying unfortunate. I don't know what else to say. It fucking sucks. How's that?
Well, it's kind of a weird thing because there was that whole hullabaloo, like, was it 4 or 5 years ago, where he wrote the open letter to his, I'm assuming now, ex-wife about how horrible she wrote the letter. I see things get conflated, but she wrote a letter about
No, it was her, yeah.
what a pretty horrible piece of shit and gaslighting asshole that he is and was. And it was a really interesting thing because a lot of Joss Whedon fans at the time were just like horrified and disassociated themselves. There was the whole thing about the website Whedon-esque basically shutting down because they wanted nothing further to do with him. And then nothing. So it was kind of like, well, I guess we ignore him and we move on. And then we started getting some inklings not too long ago from Ray Fisher about how terrible the atmosphere on Justice League reshoots were under him. And what I find interesting about him is he just like didn't let it go. It wasn't like, hey, here's what happened. It'd be great if someone looked into this. He's like, he's still on it. I mean, he's like, no, that's not good enough. This was really terrible, and this person should be brought, I don't know, brought to justice or whatever you want to call it.
You're talking about Ray Fisher is still on it, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah. Okay.
so, but that seemed to kind of, everyone was kind of like, yeah, okay, Ray, we get it. It's
Well,
bad.
he came across a little bit as disgruntled to some people, I think,
Yeah,
and they're like, "Oh,
yeah,
Ray," and then they did Warner Brothers did their investigation, which didn't necessarily bring anything to light, and they kind of decided to sweep it under the rug a little bit. I don't want to say it. I don't want to characterize it like that. I'm sure they did an investigation, and nothing really happened, and so
right.
Ray kept bringing it up because
Yeah,
it didn't seem like anything was going to happen. And now
yes,
Charisma Carpenter is coming forward, and Sarah Michelle Gellar is not saying, you know, I agree. She wasn't defending Joss really because I mean, if you notice, none of them worked with him again, especially Sarah Michelle Gellar or Michelle Trachtenberg, unfortunately, which her Instagram post was even more potentially
disturbing.
damning. Yeah, disturbing for sure.
Yeah,
What did she say? She said that there was a rule that Joss can never be alone with her again, which I
right.
think is like, what the fuck is that
And
about?
she
So
was a teenager.
yeah,
So,
so maybe that just, I mean, God, I hope it means that he was just an asshole and not, and there wasn't a line that he went over. But man, it does not look good for Joss. Which again, I'm a white male. I'm not defending Joss Whedon's behavior at all. I'm not saying if it's true. I'm saying this stuff is not acceptable. If it happened, whatever, in any context, it's not acceptable behavior. And if it was really bad, then it should be taken to its furthest possible conclusion. There should be
yes,
legal proceedings. No one should be above the law. No one should be getting away with this kind of thing at all. And I think it's amazing in a lot of ways because a few years ago this wouldn't have happened because one or two people might say something, but then no one's going to step up really because they're afraid of their careers, because Hollywood is full of people will get retribution on you and you'll be blacklisted and you'll be fucked. I know a few people in the past who've spoken up and they basically never worked again.
right.
I don't think so. There was a lot of that fear about what happened, and so the fact that people are speaking up now, it's good. And I still am waiting for, I mean, it's been a lot of the actresses who said something, but I don't hear any
Well,
producers or writers or anything like that from the show
well, that's
saying
not
anything.
true. Marty
Oh, it's not.
Knox,
Oh, good.
yeah, Marty
Good.
Noxon and Jose Molina have spoken up and
Oh,
said
good. Good.
that it was well. So here's where I get slightly disappointed, and I understand what you're saying about fearing for your career, but Marty Noxon and Jose Molina were pretty. They weren't well established, but they had a lot of power. They were like senior writers and producers on the show and stuff like that. And they're talking about, like, Molina is talking about how Joss would brag, and he witnessed a few times about making female writers cry in the writers' room. Thought that was a badge of honor. And I'm like, so you witnessed that and you didn't say anything. And Marty Noxon was like, oh yeah, it was well known what a lech Joss was, and all the way up to the top. So I'm like, well, but you were okay with that because you stayed there and you didn't say
Well, that's what I
anything.
mean. That's what I mean by fearing for their careers. And I'm not
Well,
justifying their actions, but if they had spoken up then they would have had more. At that point, if the higher ups are aware of it and not doing anything about it, then if they'd spoken up, they would have been seen as troublemakers and rocking the boat, or quote unquote difficult, probably, and they would have been censured or not even given a chance, or it wouldn't have been necessarily overt. It would have just been, oh yeah, there's a you're not going to get staffed on the next show. Your deal's not going. We're not going to pick up your deal or whatever. I mean, who knows? It was more of a toxic place, and I feel like
yeah.
hopefully that it's going to be less so now. People are going to be less afraid of speaking up because there's more outlets for information to come out. Back then, it was a closed club, right? There wasn't the internet. There wasn't any of this stuff. There wasn't any avenue for people to speak up. There's no Instagram for people to post on. There was nothing. Using their behavior. If they
Yeah.
knew, they should have said something. But I'm just trying to
Especially
explain it, if that makes
especially if
sense.
there was a lot of them. And I mean, if we're
Yeah.
talking like David Fury, who is an executive producer and I think showrunner for Angel, maybe I'm getting that wrong. But if those guys knew it, and especially if they come out now and say, yeah, there was this really bad behavior, but what are you going to do? And be like, you guys were the showrunners. You had the power to leverage, hey, listen, this isn't cool. We're going to walk. Right. And they would
Yeah.
have no problem getting more work. I mean, yeah, it was a show and it was a very popular show, but it was on, the equivalent of the CW at the time. So I don't think they would have problem getting other work. Maybe, down to Knox and Molina's level, being writers, and you're part of a writer's room, and you're like, I'm just going to shut up and do my job and get done. That's fine. But the people above, the people in power, the people that are the showrunners and are supposed to be taking care of their crew, I'm really disappointed and angry at them. So, and the same thing on Justice League too. I mean, if he was really that bad, and Jeff Johns and the people at Warner's were like, well, let's just get this movie done. It's like, fuck you guys. I mean, come on, right?
Well, Joe, there's a lot of money riding on it. They don't have time to think about humanity or anything. So
Right.
all the dollars, man. Like we always talk about it. It's a business. People disparage Hollywood a lot, and I tend to say, well, I've met a lot of great people, and there's been, there's a lot of positive things about it. It does makes entertainment for people, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of shitheads, and there's a lot of shit that goes on. And I like to think that I was a pretty decent boss and a pretty good person to work with. But and I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I don't know that I personally ever witnessed too much stuff. But people yelled at me and people called me names, and
Sure.
people above me talk shit about me all the time. I got something thrown at my head a couple of times and whatever. But I was never sexually harassed,
Right.
or anything like that. And it wasn't like demeaning. I never cried because I wasn't made to feel that way because I'm a male, I think.
Well,
And I
even
think
that
it's
other
definitely-
stuff
it's
is
definitely
not
worse
right.
for women too. Well, none of it's right. I agree.
I mean,
None of it's right. I'm not justifying it. It's just it happened, but at the time it never occurred to me to say, well, fuck this. This is not cool, because I was trying to live. I'm trying to make a living, and I was trying to keep getting work and trying to keep getting paid. And when you're in it, you want to keep going. It's like, you're willing to accept, at least in my case, I'm speaking from my personal experience, you're willing to accept a certain level of abuse, I guess, to to further your career. And it's not, I'm not saying it's okay. And I'm not saying that's the kind of toxic environment you need to work in, but that was what existed. And it wasn't always like that. I had some great bosses, and I worked with some great people, but there was a lot of dicks too. And I hate to say that, but I have to assume I've never really worked in any other business, like in a large capacity, for a long time. So I don't know what other, if in the private sector or whatever, if people are dicks all the time too. I have to assume they are a lot of times, but that's just my experience in the entertainment industry. And I feel like now people are tired of it more, and they feel like they can take back their, they can just say, what, enough of this stuff. And there's so many people doing it now that it seems like it's the right time. And I think it is. And I think that better now than never.
No,
So
I mean,
it's a good thing.
I agree. The productions I worked on, thankfully, just about all of them were a very good, creative, fun atmosphere. There's one TV series I worked on that didn't last, which was good. That was terrible. So I'm glad the show didn't last, and I didn't work on it for very long. In fact, I pretty much left early because it was just a weird atmosphere. It was one of those shoots where it was like, hey, listen, we're past, hour 18. We got to wrap. It's like, nah, we're good. Let's keep going. Let's get these shots. And
well, that's like, oh, now we're also going to forget about safety of people too. So
and then,
I mean, I worked on a thing where somebody got in a car accident on the way home from working a long day. Luckily, they didn't get killed or anything, but I know people do, and there's actually laws now in place.
Yep.
Because of that.
Yep.
Not because of that particular accident, but because of other accidents. So
yes.
it's just.
But it's obviously becoming less. The industry is getting less tolerant about things. I mean, just if we want to seg into the second person we want to talk about, I mean, Gina Carano is an example of that, right? So,
well, I like to think that the Gina Carano thing was because of her behavior, but I feel like it's like she's hurting the brand, and
right.
Although I've heard, I mean, again, this is like hearsay a little bit. I know people who've worked with her in the past, a few people, and they, she's, I don't know, she has different views. I'm not upset with people about their politics. You can disagree with me, and you can think, Trump was a genius or whatever. That's fine. But the problem with Disney and their money making machine is now she's saying shit that's going to hurt the Mandalorian, and it's going to hurt the bottom line. And we're not going to spin off a show for this person because she's saying things that we don't agree with. Now, was it just motivated by money? Probably not. But was it motivated by protecting the brand? Yeah, absolutely. But I feel like they have done their due diligence, because we talked about this before with Cass Ambar last week. It's like you can't just fire somebody without cause, even though technically it's at will.
Right.
They've got people who've done the investigation. They've got enough evidence. They've got enough things in their in their corner where they feel comfortable doing this, because they're not going to make this move lightly, especially now, and
Yes.
especially with someone who's high profile on a high profile show, because it's getting a lot of publicity, and you have to be prepared to get sued. So Disney wouldn't have taken this step lightly. They just,
Yes. I
they needed to have all their ducks in the row, basically.
I think the Gina Carano example, and again, we don't know, like you said, we don't know what investigation they've done. We don't know anything else other than, some tweets and things that she said. That situation I feel a little different about, because they were words. It's not like she wasn't like Joss Whedon. She wasn't, being a lech and mentally and physically abusing people that we know of. The same thing.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely different. Yeah.
Kevin Spacey is a different situation. He was physically abusing people. So when you get to the place of like words, I'm like, well, yeah. So I think if she had just shut up and hadn't compared, present day Republicans to persecuted Jews in World War II, she might have been okay. I don't know that she necessarily would have gotten a show, but she probably would have kept her gig. But I think once you get to that point, you're right. Disney's kind of like, okay, so how's this going to affect our brand? Probably in a bad way. We should go. I mean, listen, James Gunn is a very good example of how you can come back from that, right? I mean, he said some things that were terrible well before he worked for Marvel. They came to light. They fired him. And we can, I think we debated for a while whether that was right or wrong. He apologized, and he was able to redeem himself. Not that he necessarily had to, but he was able to come back from that, and he's back on board. So, I don't know. It seems to me if they fired her that there was more going on, but who knows?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they might have learned from the James Gunn situation where they needed to have more evidence and more. I mean, the situation is obviously different. It has to be different. It wasn't just the final thing that she said a couple of weeks ago. There must have been.
There can have been, yeah.
I would guess, and this is just speculation on my part, but I would guess that there's a pattern of behavior,
right?
Whether it's on set or whether it's in in interviews or on Twitter or whatever, that this is not just an isolated thing. It's happening more often. It's happening enough where they feel it's warranted to let her go. I mean, the statement was pretty definitive. She does not work for and never will again. It's like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, and that's not something you say.
It's not based on one stupid thing you say on Twitter. Like the James
can
Gunn
tell
thing.
you.
He said a couple of stupid things. She said a lot of stupid things. I mean, in my opinion, stupid things. She might totally believe it, and that's her right to believe stupid things. But
But there's something more substantial. I can tell you
there has to be,
as a manager at a fairly big company in my day job, it's not you don't get to fire someone in a corporate atmosphere on a whim. I can tell you that.
No,
there's a lot of stuff you go through.
You need to have evidence. You need to have a huge folder full of problems. Yes. So that's what I'm saying. It's a pattern of behavior.
Yes.
It's a pattern of, these are the 100 things you've done that are not cool.
Right.
But of course, people will spin it like, the only strong female character in the Star Wars universe is getting persecuted, because of her beliefs, whatever. People are going to spin it however they want to spin it, and that's fine. She's going to spin it however she wants to spin it. But the bottom line is, you are responsible for what you say. Just like we're responsible for what we say on the show,
right,
and on Twitter. We're responsible for what we say and what we do. We're responsible for whether our opinions are considered valid, or whether people, whether we're saying stupid shit. Ultimately, as people have said, it's not freedom of speech, it's freedom from consequences, right? So you're not free of consequences, and the consequences for her were, you don't get to work for Disney anymore. But she's got a new movie, so, whatever.
It's not censorship. It's not, it's like, and you know what? I'm certain that part of the consideration is protecting the brand, and that's what, I mean,
of course
you do that when you're a company. You have to protect your brand. That's just like people are like, oh, it's so bad of Lucasfilm to go after Star Wars fan films, or CBS to lock down Star Trek fan films. It's like that they own it. They're going to protect against anything that might be derivative or lessen the brand in their eyes. It's what they do. They if I owned something, I would not be like, oh, sure, everybody can have it for free and do whatever they want. Maybe with some things I would, but it's you know, something that people are putting. There isn't just like one Disney guy that's making all this and churning it out of a machine. It's, you know, hundreds of people putting hard work into something, and then to have all these other things that take away from it. Yeah, sure, they're going to shut them down. I mean, it's,
Well, if you know
you
anything
know,
about the history of Disney as a company, as a corporation, you know that they are notoriously litigious. They will
yes,
find you anywhere you are, in any country you are. If you're making knockoff Mickey Mouse T-shirts, they will find you, and they have entire entire buildings full of attorneys just for this purpose, to protect their IP. Because when you watch a Disney show, you know exactly what you're getting.
yes,
It's they jealously, and for good reason, they guard their brand, their reputation, and now that they own Marvel and Star Wars and pretty much everything else, they're gonna guard that shit with their lives, basically,
yes,
because it's a huge. Do you know how much money Star Wars makes? Billions of dollars on the
right.
for people, and Marvel makes billions of dollars. They are not gonna let one person fuck that up. It's not gonna happen. They're gonna vigorously
Yes,
guard their IP.
they
It's
they
so
even protect
it's not
themselves
gonna.
from themselves. I mean, like Song of the
Yeah,
South will never be seen again, probably. You know, there
I've
was
still
a
got my copy. Oh, sorry. No.
yeah, there was a situation back in the '80s where a comic publisher discovered that the original very first Mickey Mouse comic strips were in the public domain for some
Mm.
weird reason. So they started publishing them, and in those, like Mickey Mouse, like swears. I mean, it's like got the characters.
Yeah.
He punches people. He's a womanizer, and Disney shut that down quick. So they're going to. I mean, they're going to protect their brand, and you know, it's
People who think this is a political decision, or people who think it's a discrimination decision, people who think all that, it may be a tiny bit of that, but I would bet you any amount of money that it's almost entirely about this person is interfering with our money. She
yes,
needs to stop interfering with our money, so we're going to cut her loose. Now, without a platform or whatever, she can complain all she wants on Twitter and whatever. No one's going to listen as much, but she is not the person we want representing our show anymore. So goodbye. And
yeah,
that's all there was to it. It's a business decision. It's a business, people. Hollywood is not. You don't own the characters. You don't own the people. I know you're invested in their lives and everything because you love this stuff, but the people who run the businesses don't care as much. They're going to protect their business and their bottom line. So that's why she was fired, not
and
because of anything else.
and to make it clear, this isn't just about like you know, five people at the top rolling in a swimming pool full of money. This is also, they're also responsible. Yeah, they get a fair amount, but they're also responsible for hundreds and hundreds of people that are employed by them,
Thousands of
and
people. Yeah.
rely on that money to get paid. So this isn't when they're like, oh yeah, it's just fat cats getting rich. Well, tell that to the guy who builds the sets. When if they went forward with this show and something else came to light and they fired her and canceled the show, he would be out of work, right? So
Well,
you know,
don't mistake it though. Fat cats are getting rich, but
they
yes.
are, but there's
But
also
the
a
set
lot of
decorator is also
people
making
employed.
okay
Yeah,
money too. Yeah,
exactly.
no, that's true.
So
And thank goodness for unions because of that. So,
yes, exactly. So
yeah, I agree with you. There's thousands of people employed by Disney around the world. Maybe 100,000 people employed by Disney
sure,
around the world. But there's thousands of people on the cruise, and there's all these people who have jobs, the below the line people or whatever, producers, directors, set decorators, craft service people, whatever, the grips, everybody, they all rely on this income. And so if one person is messing it up for other people, not that The Mandalorian was ever going to get canceled or
no,
whatever,
no.
that's fine, but they definitely are going to give her her own show, and they're definitely not going to keep her around. But again, it's also got to be more than just her tweets. There's got to be there's like set behavior, I'm
Yes,
sure, and there's just
yes.
it's got to be more than that. So anyway,
It's
we don't need
unfortunate,
to give it.
and it's
It is unfortunate.
You know,
I hate when people get fired. It bothers me because
yeah,
I hate when people get fired. But
and I
it's
really
just,
like that character, and it's, you know, I'm like,
well,
I'm disappointed we won't get to see. Although, you know, Disney.
will they recast? That's my question.
I don't know that they'll recast, but here's the thing that all Star Wars fans should know, that isn't necessarily the end of the character. I mean, I bet there'll be Marvel Comics, you know, a miniseries or a series, Cara Dune, or novels. I mean, so there is ways that we'll get to continue with that character. But I liked her performance. I thought she was great as a character, and I'm disappointed that
Well, I wouldn't say great. She was okay.
yeah, I thought she was pretty great. I'm just disappointed that that character in that form won't be seen again. So
Agree to disagree on that one.
Okay.
I thought her acting is not the greatest.
She
But
was the
you know
weakest part of the show. I'll say that.
She was, but she was physically imposing, and the physicality of the role I think was good. And she wasn't supposed to be. She was like a person of few words. She's more of a person of action, which I appreciated. And I really think that if they really wanted to bring that character back, they could recast. And there's so many other actors out there who could totally kill within that part.
Yeah, they could recast. I'd be all right with that.
Probably wouldn't be, dicks about it. But anyway, we spent a lot of time with this.
We did.
Bottom line is, don't be a sexually harassing asshole. And if you're on a huge show, you might want to, tone down the political rhetoric on Twitter. So
just
if you want to keep your job.
Follow Will Wheaton's #1 rule: don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Exactly. Yeah, he's right. He's absolutely right. Don't be a dick if you can help it.
Yep.
So, all right. WandaVision, off the hook this week. Holy crap! I feel bad. We kind of started with the shit stuff first, and now we're going to talk about the fun stuff. But
yeah, really.
Anyway,
now to lighten things up.
Yeah. Speaking of now to lighten things up. Speaking of Disney and Marvel, let's shift gears to WandaVision, a show that I frankly enjoy so much that it's one of those shows where when it's over, I'm like, God, that's not enough. More.
Yeah, exactly.
So on this week, okay, spoiler alert if you haven't watched WandaVision this week, but it's just some crazy stuff. I mean, more Pietro, more questions, more answers. Vision tries to bust out, and here's my question though, Wanda. I don't know if you feel like our theories about the show were shifted a little bit because she seems like more in control. But I'm wondering. Here's my question. I'm trying to frame it as a question. Pietro seemed to be asking a lot of questions about how did you do this?
Yes.
So I'm wondering if Pietro, I still don't think it's Pietro, although she saw his face, another like pop scare, but that was more of a Halloween theme thing, I thought. But or jump scare, I mean, not a pop scare. But
yes.
Why is he asking all these questions about how she did it? Do you think it's because he's the creature or the entity trying to figure out how she's doing it and trying to tap that power? That was my thought anyway. What do you think?
No, I absolutely agree with that because it was very interesting this episode because they're completely playing it as the Pietro from the MCU, but with the other Pietro's face. So,
right, yeah.
And especially the way she was interacting with him. Although, like one of the flashbacks, she's like, that's not quite exactly how that went. And I think she meant that. I don't think she meant that in a sitcom kind of way. I think she meant that in I don't really remember that the same way you do. And making her question. And the fact that it doesn't appear that she summoned him or created him, that he just showed up. So he was either sent in by somebody or, like you said, is the actual mastermind behind the whole thing. And he or it is trying to get her to remember how it all started so he can tap into her power. Because she seems to have forgotten. So yeah, I agree that he's not what he seems at all because...
No, it seems my question before, something we talked about was, is she actually the one who created this? But it seems like in this episode they're saying specifically that, yeah, she has this power to create this entire, pocket world or whatever. And especially at the end when she's able to make it bigger, which I thought was awesome. Yeah. I have to say Vision, I'm going to make it bigger.
Right.
And then you got to wonder, it's funny that all the sword agents turned into clowns. I thought that was kind of funny. And there's a few mimes in there too, because mimes are frightening. But I want to know, because poor Darcy, I want to know what she's going to turn into.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't get to see
interesting.
That. Yeah,
we didn't get to see that. We'll say that next week. But I was sad that the director escaped. But I'm sure he'll get his comeuppance at some point. But yeah, it was such a good episode. I also want to talk about the interaction between Vision and Agatha too.
Agnes, yes.
I'm sorry, Agnes. Pardon me. Whoops. Sorry.
It could be Agatha, but we'll see.
I know, but it was weird because. Well, first of all, he's wandering around looking at the places, and the farther he gets from Wanda, the less people are moving around, which I thought was brilliant because she's the one who's controlling everything. But how could she possibly control everybody? Well, she doesn't control everybody.
And she asked that too in previous episodes, so that's kind of great.
But she can't be controlling everybody because they're not doing anything. Right. And of course, there's that woman who's putting the line of the decorations up in the one tier because she's probably been doing that same move for like 2 days now or something.
Right.
I felt that's the horror elements of this thing, which I enjoy. But so Vision wakes Agnes up, right?
Yes.
and she's like, "You're the Vision from the Avengers." Like, well, that's great. What's an Avenger? So
Yeah.
it's interesting that he doesn't have any memory. Well, like you said in the last episode, I have no memory of how we got here because he did.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it seemed like she was still part of the, being controlled, not necessarily in control of anything. Did you get that feeling, or do you
Oh
think that
yeah.
she's just faking it, or?
Absolutely. Because when he woke her up, yeah, she was. It was exactly like waking up from a dream. Because yeah, she was like, "Oh, you're the Vision, one of the Avengers. Are you guys here to save us?" And then she was like, "Oh, but wait, you're dead." So yeah, that was a really cool interaction, and obviously, necessary to propel Vision forward to go. Yeah, no, I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go get help because that's
I
the
s-
thing he says is he's crawling and I think the people need help. I was like as he's breaking apart outside the barrier. That was pretty freaky
that
too.
was a
But
nice little visual callback to the snap too, because he was kind of going to pieces like the
he
people that were
was.
snapped were. So that was like,
He
ooh, that's
was.
kind of weird.
Yeah, and poor Darcy. He's dying. Help him.
But
She's adorable.
But
I
I,
love
oh,
Kathy.
she's the best.
Yeah.
We got to have a Darcy and Jimmy Woo series. I'm just saying. But
Yeah, I'm fine. I think that'd be great. I don't. It was funny. The security at the sword camp is pretty lax, though. If you think about it, it's like they knock these guards out. And they're just like running around for like an hour. But they had the sword ponchos, so they're good.
well,
But
they do. Yes, yes,
I love those sword ponchos. I actually want one. But
and a hat. They have a hats on.
well,
And
that's a great
poncho.
disguise in any Marvel movie. If you notice, Cap's wearing a hat sometimes. And like the
Yes.
scene in Winter Soldier where he's like in the mall with
Yeah.
which with Black Widow, he's got the cap on, so no one can see tell who he is.
Oh, he's
Because
got
no
a
one knows who
hat on.
Captain America is with a hat on, for God's sake.
Right.
But and they're always the generic caps because you can't have any logos or anything.
No, no, of course not. Well, they could have had a sword logo, I suppose. Maybe that's two on the nose.
They could have had a sword logo, but yeah, they knock out the guards, and then like no one is looking for them. They go into the super secret digital hub or whatever, and Dart's like, I gotta crack into the thing, and
I gotta
10
hack
seconds
into
later,
it. Yeah.
I'm through the firewall. It was easy, I'm a genius. So, but I love her. I don't care. She's awesome.
Well, there's something
But,
going on with Monica too. I think this is going to be the changing her into Photon, or the second Captain Marvel, however you want to look at it, but giving her light powers. So
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's
yeah.
the way they're going with it. I mean, why wouldn't they, right? Because she's gone through the barrier, and she's eventually going to be that. If they're following the continuity of the comics, she's eventually going to be a superhero too.
Yeah.
But that's a question about still why does she hate Captain Marvel, but also who's the mystery dude? It turns
I
out
know.
the guy, I
Yes.
got to meet my guy in an hour up at the whatever. So who's the mystery dude? I wonder.
I'm guessing he's going to show up next episode because they were on their way in the Jeep to go meet him.
Yeah,
So
I still don't think it's gonna be Reed Richards, but maybe
I don't think it is either.
Talos.
I agree with you.
maybe?
You don't introduce the Fantastic Four, even just one of them, in this. It's their own movie. No, I think it would be Talos. That would be perfect. So
It makes
here's
sense. I mean, he's like an engineer type, right? So
here's what I kind of hope they do. They could do a twofer cameo, basically. So when they meet Talos, obviously it's been known from Spider-Man that he has appeared as Nick Fury. So they have him appear as Nick Fury for a second, so they can have Sam Jackson show up, in a cameo.
oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
And then
yeah.
he turns into Talos. And
he morphs into Talos. Yeah.
I'll say this though, and this has probably been a problem in comic books, not just Marvel but DC. All these super secret spy organizations really got to screen their employees better. I'm just saying, because it always ends up they
Well-
get run by some guy that is like out of his head, or is the bad guy, or they have a
Sure.
I mean, Shield got infiltrated by Hydra. You think after that, for Sword, they would do a little bit more.
Last
lengthy
time I
screening
trusted
process.
somebody, I lost an eye. Oh, sorry.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, I agree with you, but you gotta have conflict, and if there's nobody evil, then there's no conflict. So, but I don't know. I'm kind of wondering if he's just more like not super evil, but just like more. We have to protect our IP, which is Vision, who we're going to turn into sentient weapons. So we have to protect, which is why they're tracking him and not Wanda so much. They don't want to. They want to destroy Wanda, so they can have Vision back to use for weapons.
Yeah, that's
Right?
true. It's like
That's his
let's get her-
motivation, I think.
Let's get her asset back. Yeah.
Yeah, he's pissed off because they were using Vision. If clearly by that video they saw they were experimenting on him, they were using his mind and his whatever to turn to do weapons. I mean, that's what SWORD stands for. Sentient weapon is the first two words in the acronym. So don't ask me to do the rest. I can't remember. But observational something or other. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the point is that I think that's his primary motivation. Like Tony Stark, a shield of armor around the world, suit of armor, right? So he's like, I have to protect this. So he's a patriot in a way, if you think about it. He's like, I'm trying to protect the world. Look what happened with Thanos. So we need more advanced weapons up in space or whatever. Yep. So we need Vision to create that. So I don't know if he's going to be the bad guy, but he's definitely an antagonist for sure. But his motives, I don't think, are as sinister as people might have thought. I don't think he's the big bad for sure.
No.
But I think he's more of a bureaucrat, more of a we have to protect the world kind of thing. Which makes sense, I guess, if you think about it.
And I think the obvious solution there is going to be in the finale. It's obvious that Wanda has to wake up, and as part of that, when she breaks the spell or brings down the illusion, that Vision just vanishes, because obviously he can't. I think the point of him falling to pieces was he can't exist outside of it. So once that goes away, he goes away, and that's going to be the big dramatic moment. Her realizing she's got to get past her grief and finally let him go.
It's interesting because he wasn't falling apart at SWORD. They had disassembled him.
I get that.
When he died, he just there was like the big cave in his forehead where Thanos took the Mind Stone, but the rest of his body was intact. So I feel like him disintegrating was the barrier pulling him back in, was pulling pieces off of him to prevent him from escaping. He wasn't disintegrating for that reason. He was disintegrating because the barrier was trying to keep him in there. The power of the barrier, or the power of Wanda's will, was trying to keep him in there. But if he was just outside the barrier, he would be intact.
Well, so here's my theory, though. I think Wanda
not disintegrated.
I think Wanda took the pieces of him that they had left, and realized I don't want him to be used as a weapon, and decided to destroy them completely so that they couldn't. And the trauma of that is whoever the big bad is latched onto and started this whole thing, and used that grief and that guilt to feed this whole thing and have her in control. So I think he's gone, and
that's interesting.
The spell is broken, that he'll vanish like he was snapped, and it will remove that guy's prize of getting his weapon back, but also make it so there's no way they can use Vision as a weapon at all. So that's what I think the resolution is going to be part
That's
of.
Interesting. Pietro said something that was interesting too. Your dead husband can't die twice or whatever.
Right.
And she reacted poorly to that, clearly, because she's the one who killed him originally, right? And Thanos snapped him back with the Time Stone.
Yep.
But then she couldn't kill him again, but she was going to try, but then she got knocked away and then got snapped away.
Yeah.
So you might be right. Maybe she did take him to destroy him once and for all, so he cannot be used as a weapon. So
because she can obliterate him. When she destroyed the Time Stone, he got obliterated the first time before Thanos reversed everything. So she has ability, and they have mentioned a few times the level of her power. So I think she, was like, I'm not going to let him be used as a weapon. She obliterated him. She obviously feels guilty about it, and whoever, Mephisto or whoever it turns out to be, was like, hey, here's my way into this world. I can use this guilt, and it might have been kind of like what he did with Spider-Man. It's like, what do you want? I can do anything for you. And she's like, I just want my husband back. And he's like, done, boom, and there we go.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. And she. But again, I think since Pietro's asking the question of how did you do this, though, I don't think Mephisto, whoever it is, knows that I think she created this on her own, and then he's trying to figure out how she's able to alter, the perceptions of people, control people like this, change reality like this. And so, if you're familiar with the comics, even the kids are like puppets of Mephisto's to try to get her to do stuff. But the kids are interesting because they have powers. And I sort of wonder if the kids are the ones that summoned Pietro, because they saw their mom was upset, and maybe they brought him in that way, which would make sense if they're puppets of the evil person who's controlling everything. But I don't know that everyone is controlling, that people are controlling. I think Wanda is controlling most things, but she's just being influenced by somebody else.
It's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like, let me turn on this experiment and see what happens. Okay, now as it's going, and this is, I'm talking about like Mephisto, or whoever the big bad is. It's like, oh, I see an opportunity here to flip a switch. Let's see what happens. Oh, wow, this is interesting. So she's created this whole thing. So let me see if I can find out how she did that and therefore be able to control her and control the situation. So that's kind of the
Yeah.
way I looked at it. Especially, I thought it was really interesting that Pietro asked a lot of questions and never answered any of the ones that were directed at him. So,
Well, like, yeah, what happened to your accident? What happened to your accident? Yeah.
yeah, so that leads me to believe that, yeah, there's something. He's not Pietro. He's manipulating the situation. But yeah, it's kind
Well,
of like,
especially since she blasted him. I don't know if she would have done that to her real brother.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, but yeah, that's my standing theory that they're going to be deprived of their prize at the end when the whole thing goes away, and that's that's going to be the big emotional scene that she realizes, if I do this, if I turn this off, that you're gone for good, and it's going to have to be, hey, you got to let me go, kind of thing. So
Yeah, I'm sure that that'll be the situation where she has to do that to save others,
yes,
and
so
that will. The question is, who will come in at the end? Because they're still talking about this big cameo, and it's still. I'm convinced it's not Evan Peters, and I'm convinced it's not whoever Monica and Jimmy are going to meet. It's not that big person either.
right,
Or maybe it is. Maybe it's Doctor Strange is an aerospace engineer, so
right,
it's going to be whoever comes in at the end. Because if they're talking about magic, especially now, the only person it could really be is Doctor Strange, right?
yeah, and I
It
think
has to be Benedict. It
yeah,
has to be Benedict Cumberbatch. It has to be.
I
Because
think
they're
it will
speaking about
be him.
it's not just and
Yeah.
it's not just radiation, right? It's magic now. So
Well, and I think it will be her realizing, okay, now I do have to shut this down. I don't know how, or it's, if it continues to grow, maybe it's like now it's too big for me to turn down, and he's like, hey, I can help you.
right, but then how does she become the bad guy in multiverse? Maybe she doesn't become the bad guy in
I
multiverse.
don't.
Maybe she's
That's rumor. Nobody has said that she's the bad guy. I mean, it's
I don't know. It's pretty substantiated rumor from what I hear, but it's a rumor from what I hear.
it's a rumor for one of our sources. I have trusted sources, internet
Trusted
sources.
yeah, internet sources are just as trustworthy as they sound.
Yeah. So I don't know that
So.
she's necessarily going to be the bad guy.
That's true, but she's definitely in the movie. She was on the panel at the D20. So
Yeah.
they said,
No, I know she's in the
"Here's
movie. I don't think
Elizabeth
she's gonna be the bad
Olsen, and she'll be in Multiverse of Madness."
guy. Yeah. Yeah. She's
So
gonna,
if she's mad, and it's a multiverse, so maybe she's just crazy. I don't know. But yeah, you're right about what you were saying before about you hope it's not just about her feeling grief for not having a husband or whatever, and this is all caused by that. But it seems like a lot of it is caused by her being empty and alone and in desperate fear. But that does seem like a place for exploitation. So
yeah. That's why I
by
said
an evil creature.
I don't think that's
I
the
like your theory.
catalyst
I
of
like
it.
that.
I don't think that's
Yeah.
the catalyst of it. I think it's some entity saw an advantage they could take, and they pumped up the guilt or loneliness or whatever. And like I said, Mephisto in the comics has typically asked characters, what do you want, or what can I do for you, and made deals with them because he's the Marvel universe equivalent of the devil. So I could see him manipulating the situation to be like, hey, I see you're really upset about this, and she's like, yeah, I just want it to be better, and he's like, good enough, done, and flips the switch. And
Yeah.
but then realizes later she's more powerful than he knew, and and is like, all right, I got to figure this out. I've started this experiment, and now it's getting out of control, and I don't know what to do about it. So let me figure out if I can take advantage of the situation still and actually control it, or if I just need to wipe everybody out and start over, kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely leaning towards it isn't her just I can't be without my man and starting this whole thing. I firmly believe it's something taking advantage of that and heightening it, and unbeknownst to her, without her really wanting that, it's like, here, I'll give you what you want, and I'll get what I want by figuring out
I don't
your
really know
power.
how all this started. She
Yeah.
still doesn't know exactly. I think she's genuine when she says she doesn't know how it all
Yeah,
started.
absolutely.
She just sort of started it. But so here's one more theory, and then we can maybe move on. But if they're talking about the multiverse, it is a multiverse already. So the Wanda that's in the world is the Wanda from the MCU, and the Wanda that came out of the thing to fight is the Wanda from a different
Oh.
multiverse.
Maybe
is
that's
from a
who's
different,
controlling it all this time is
a different Wanda. Yeah,
maybe that's the bad Wanda. It's an alternate evil Wanda. She didn't have a goatee,
yeah,
but it's a it's an
right.
alternate
Because
evil Wanda. Yeah.
which would satisfy the requirements of her being the bad guy in multiverse, because it's the
Yes.
multiverse Wanda from a different universe who's the bad person. She doesn't get the benefit of being an Avenger. She's just bad, and she's the one who comes out of the wall of the thing and says, "Here's your missile," or whatever, because she's
Right.
evil and she's got the accent too. But the other
Oh.
Wanda is not. She's the good Wanda who was in the multiverse. So I was in the our regular MCU. So anyway, that's just another theory.
Yeah, because who better to manipulate you in your time of grief than yourself, right? So.
Well, and Pietro said something interesting. It's much better than when you used to do those little tendrils in people's minds. So I don't know. Maybe she's just we're gonna pull back, and there's one Wanda sticking her little tendrils in the other Wanda.
And maybe it's the Wanda from the X-Men universe who is evil, and that's why Pietro shows up as Evan Peters.
See, it all makes sense.
Because she's like, oh, oops, I made a mistake. Well, they'll just go with it. It'll be fine.
Well, that's the Quicksilver that's alive too.
Right. Yeah.
Because the Quicksilver in the MCU is dead.
That's true. So I'll bring my
So
Pietro over. It's like,
I'll bring the one I've got. I'll just bring him over. This is the one. Yeah. So if you say, so I'm going to throw this out there right now. The big person, the huge cameo that's going to happen is Wolverine. Hugh Jackman. He's going to show up as Wolverine.
Why
at the
not?
end. Well, because if you recall from the comics, it's Wolverine who goes around and does the little tapping things on people's brains to bring them out of it, like Vision's doing in the show.
That's true.
I'm just saying, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. What a huge deal that would be, right? That would be mind-altering, like on the level of Luke Skywalker.
Well,
maybe,
he
right?
had the hair in the Halloween costume, and everyone assumes that that's just from Pietro's hair in the comic books, but it was really, really exaggerated, much like Wolverine's hair kind of does that on the side. So it totally could be Hugh Jackman.
Because if you think about it, in the MCU where that Quicksilver lives, Wolverine's dead, right? Logan is dead.
Right.
But in the MCU that good Wanda, let's just call her that, is in, Wolverine is still alive.
Yes.
In theory.
So this is how they could introduce Wolverine.
They could. Not that it'd be Hugh Jackman, though. I mean, it could be, but that would be cool, wouldn't it?
I like this. And I actually really like your theory of evil Wanda from the multiverse being the big bad, because it
satisfies both words, multiverse and madness, right?
Right. And what I do like about the Marvel Universe movies and sometimes the TV shows is they also kind of like to tease things and then play against those expectations. Like everybody's expecting at this point it's going to be Mephisto as the big bad. And if it turned out it wasn't, that would be great, I think, because it goes against expectations and it's like, yeah, no, we're telling a different story. And we're not just, copying the comics. Oh, yeah, no, see, I'm really liking this theory now. And then now it's not going to be it, and I'm going to be disappointed. So you've ruined,
well, it might not be, but
you've ruined the show for me. No, I'm just kidding.
It also makes sense if you think about it, because in the comics, Mephisto is one of the ways that Wanda gets her chaos magic, right?
Right.
So it could be both of them working together against the Wanda of this multiverse.
That's true.
So you got a twofer, and he's helping to manipulate the Wanda of the evil Wanda. Let's just call her Wanda number 2 or whatever, evil Wanda. Listen, I take everything from old Star Trek episodes where Kirk goes through the transporter, and then you get two Kirks. So you get good Kirk and bad Kirk, right?
Well,
so everything comes from old Star Trek.
It would make a whole lot of sense though for the Doctor Strange movie, because
it would be.
I mean, you've got to have like a Mephisto or Dormammu kind of character that Doctor Strange fights. You just have to. But it's like, so where does the multiverse aspect come into it? Well, if it's, Mephisto using evil Wanda to try to wreak havoc across the multiverse, that makes complete sense.
Right.
So.
And she's one of the creatures, or one of the people that can go across because of her chaos magic. She can go across the multiverse like Doctor Strange can.
And so then Elizabeth Olsen gets to play both Wandas in the Doctor Strange movie. I like this.
Well, she got to play both Wandas in this show too, because she got to play evil Wanda with her accent. Or well, that's a terrible accent.
Wow.
Accent, but
wow. Yeah, don't do that. No.
I won't do that again. But I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there and see what you thought about it.
I'm a big fan of that. So.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to the show. It's amazing, and I'm looking forward to Falcon and Winter Soldier. Even though I'm not, I don't know. The trailer was okay. I guess my biggest problem is I kind of miss. I like those two characters, but I feel like Cap was a good
Yeah.
person to throw in the mix too. I'm going to miss Captain America. That's going to be a problem for me, but I'll still enjoy it because I do enjoy the Winter Soldier in particular. I think it's my favorite Captain America movie. Oh, Civil War's good too, but
From what I hear from people that have seen more footage and stuff about the show, my trusted sources, people,
the internet sources, babe. Yeah,
that Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I keep wanting to say Falcon and the Snowman, which was a great movie.
it's a great movie. Yeah,
But Falcon and the Winter Soldier is not to the degree of WandaVision, but is different than everybody thinks it's going to be. It's more, I guess. They're like, yeah, it's definitely kind of a spy thriller type show, but because from what I hear, it's got a R rating, the equivalent on TV. But also
that's hard to believe though for a Disney Plus show. I don't know.
I know. I'm kind of surprised by that, but people are saying that this is much more than what we've gotten from the trailer and what people think, and is exceptional. So.
Well, yeah, they're marketing it to the people who saw, the Avengers movies. Here's some Avengers who are going to come, so they got to market it that way. But so it's going to be Disney Plus After Dark. Is that what you're saying?
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus Disney Triple X. Wait,
no.
Well, it's definitely going to be violent. It's definitely going to be, I like the fact that they're exploring all these new things because they have this show coming up, and then they have Loki, which looks totally bonkers, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So whatever. I'm still happy every week to see that Marvel, the logo thing start at the beginning. I'm like, thank goodness, I miss these movies, even though they're popcorn, kind of. I don't care. I miss the shows. I still watch all the old movies.
Oh yeah.
And I like WandaVision. I think it's super cool.
Yes.
And innovative, and not something you could definitely not do in a movie setting in the theater. You'd have to do it as television. You just wouldn't be able to do it as well. I don't think the fact that you need this much time to tell the story, I think is worthwhile. So
absolutely,
it's gonna be great. So do you have any predictions about the cameo or no?
At this point, I don't really know. I mean, I'm still we got to go meet my guy. I'm still expecting it to be Reed Richards, but like I said, they have a tendency to completely play against expectations, so it's probably not going to be Reed Richards. So I'm going to stand by. It's going to be Nick Fury. It's going to look like Nick Fury at first, who morphs into Talos, because that would make sense, especially since Monica is going to be in Captain Marvel 2, and Talos / Nick Fury also has a lot of strong ties to Captain Marvel. So I'm going to stand by that. It's going to be Sam Jackson for, and you'll be able to hear the dollar signs clicking every second he's on screen for like 2 minutes. He'll say one witty line and then morph into, and she'll be like, "Knock it off, Talos," or something like that. And he'll be like, "How did you know?" and switch, something cutie like that. But
that's interesting.
I think
that's entirely possible for sure.
So that's what my prediction is going to be.
Or it doesn't have to be Reed. It could be Ben Grimm too.
It could be.
But because he'd be the Thing, so the Thing shows up, because that could be anybody, right? That could be any actor.
Oh no, I think it would be pre Fantastic Four. They haven't become the Fantastic Four yet. So
here's the thing: if you're gonna introduce the character, it has to be the character who's going to play or the actor who's going to play the character in the movies. So
but that
means they've already cast Fantastic Four, so it's not going to be. That's why I don't think that the director of Sword is the big bad guy either, because he's not. I mean, he's not a big enough name. I hate to say it that way.
Well, that's probably
so.
True.
He's not the big bad. So he's just like the misdirection. He's the red herring, and we'll just call it that.
So here's
the MacGuffin.
Here's my one last question for you for WandaVision, and then we can move on. Do you think that whoever the ultimate big bad is revealed, even if it continues into Doctor Strange, is going to be setting up like the next Thanos for the next wave of movies and shows? Do you think that's what we're going to get here?
Well, yeah, I would think so, because if it's going to be someone, if it's going to be someone if they're going to bother to set it up like this, then I feel like it's going to have to carry over at least into multiverse, and maybe it won't carry over into the rest of the Marvel movies, but I feel like they probably could, because why not?
Yeah, that's what I think we're kind of getting is like, is going to be
who's out there still besides Thanos? There's a lot of villains out there, right?
Right. Oh yeah, but yeah, they could totally have Mephisto manipulating evil Wanda, and then Mephisto gets quote unquote defeated in I want to say mouth of madness like you do, but the madness of the multiverse, but yet still pops up here and there.
Madness of the multiverse.
The mouth.
Well, they just cast. They just announced somebody. Oh boy, now my Marvel knowledge is gonna fail me because I can't remember the character. But it's another big evil guy. I'm totally drawing a blank, so never mind. I won't even say it. But
was it Nightmare? I think I saw something like that. But...
Well, it's something about Nightmare, but no. But there's another guy on sort of a level of Thanos, and I'm totally drawing a blank. But gosh darn it. Anyway, there's lots of Marvel villains out there that we could still find. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a Thanos level guy, but it could be
exactly.
And maybe it will. And will they set this up for the rest of the MCU? Sure, probably, because why bother having all these shows if you're not going to extend the universe into the cinematic universe? Although again, we can't really call it cinematic universe because it's TV. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like events that happen in these shows are going to affect events that happen in the future movies. They have to, right? I mean, they have to all tie together. So.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to. Yes.
They need to. So I'm looking forward to the next episode. I'll be really sad when the show is over, and I hope they do more. Except that they probably won't. But I'll be happy to get back to the theater and still go see Black Widow in theaters somewhere down the line too. Which is funny considering they made that movie way before all this. So how does that tie in, or maybe it doesn't?
Well, I hear Feige is against doing a joint release of streaming and theater for Black Widow. He wants it in the theater.
Oh, Feige.
I know, but there's lots of great shows coming out. There's lots of movies. It's thankfully, at least in my mind, the MCU. I'm going to still call it that. It hasn't been derailed because of everything that's going on and is going forward stronger than ever, despite having a definitive conclusion in a way in Endgame. I like that. We can continue. I mean, there's still, the Marvel Comics universe was started in 1961, and we have all those years, all those decades of stories of all these great characters that can continue. So.
Yeah, and the best part is you can just reboot it all in 10 years, right? You can bring it all back again. Let's remember the Captain America origin story. Well, you can do it all again later.
Don't even have to do that, man. I mean, they've proven it's like the next slate of movies are, characters that have never had a chance to be in live action before. There's hundreds of Marvel characters, so you can keep like Iron Man, Captain America as like your forefathers or whatever, and you can continue. And you could probably figure out ways to make those guys do cameos down the road. I mean, there's already rumors that Evans is signed up to appear as Captain America in some other movies. So,
Well, you've got X-Men. You can do several films with X-Men. You've got, other Marvel staples, the Fantastic Four. You've got, all kinds of Silver Surfer. You've got so many other things. The Eternals can be a couple of things. You got Shang-Chi. You got all
Moon Knight. I'm really looking forward to Moon Knight. I love that.
Moon Knight. You could do back and do an Iron Fist movie and do Iron Fist correctly. You could do Daredevil again if you wanted to. Although I think that Daredevil should, or maybe Daredevil. Maybe Charlie Cox will be the cameo that jumps in that thing.
He's supposed to be in the Spider-Man movie, but I doubt that.
I hope so.
I would love that. It would be great.
So, like you said, there's a lot of things out there to watch, and one of the things that I watched recently, which is a crazy movie, and we can talk about it for a minute. It's kind of a pick, but it's kind of whatever. I enjoyed it very much. It's called Willy's Wonderland, starring Nicolas Cage. Basically, Nicolas Cage plays a drifter, who just sort of shows up, has a car problem, and gets enlisted to clean up this Chuck E. Cheese kind of place in exchange for getting his car repaired, and then strange things happen.
Wacky hijinks
too much. Wacky. Well, it is kind of wacky, but he does fight the animatronic. I mean, it's in the trailer, so he does fight the animatronic creatures from the Chuck E. Cheese. It's not a Chuck E. Cheese, but it's those kind of things. It's Willy and his cohorts. He fights them in the. It's just bonkers. The whole movie. It's super funny, and and I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. And of course, there's a cast of kids, sort of teenagers, that come in, and they want to do something to this place that's caused so many problems for the town. They're gonna mess with it, and they get sucked in, of course. And then there has to be a body count. So
of course,
some of the teenagers don't make it. I'm sorry to tell you, but it's so funny though. It's just and the other thing people ask me, like you asked me this when we were doing the pre-show. It's like, is Nicolas Cage doing his Nicolas Cage best?
Right.
And the unusual thing about it is his character does not speak during the entire movie.
Yeah. See, I have to watch it just for that alone. So, Here's the thing about Nicolas Cage. He he was great for a while, for a long time, and then he just seemed to do a series of movies where it just seemed like he didn't really care anymore, or he just was. I don't know what it is, but lately I'm like re-energized. Like for this movie, there was The Colors of Space or whatever, that movie he was
Yeah,
great
Color
in.
Out of Space
Color
was crazy. Yeah.
And they're also working on the one where he basically plays a fictionalized version of himself.
Right.
And I'm like, any actor that's willing to take on something like that, to me, is first of all a pretty decent person because they're willing to mock themselves, but is also a good actor because you got to act yourself, but also in an actorly way in order to do the role. Kind of like now I can't think. Matt, what's his name from Friends, did this British show called Episodes for a number of years, and he was
Matt LeBlanc.
Yeah, Matt LeBlanc, and he was absolutely brilliant in that. If all you know him from is as Joey from Friends and think, well, that's just a one note character, it was, but you should see this show Episodes because he plays a very fictionalized and often unkind and not nice version of himself, and does it brilliantly, and it was great.
Well, if
so
it's really fiction, maybe that's how he really is.
it could be.
Yeah, I doubt
So
it.
any actor that's
You
willing
do it.
to take on something like that, that's like, I'm going to basically, put myself bare in front of everybody and invite you to mock me and dislike me. They're okay in my book. So I'm looking forward to. I got to see this Willy's Wonderland, and I'm looking forward to that other movie that he's working on.
Yeah, it's just crazy because you think that Nicolas Cage is going to be all crazy, jumping around, and I said crazy twice, but he's going to be doing his Nicolas Cage thing, but he doesn't. He manages to do a lot of physical comedy in the movie because it's not like a totally serious film, obviously, but his character's got some weird quirks, but he doesn't speak. He just sort of he just sort of like communicates with his head or with his eyes or whatever. And it's actually some pretty good acting on his part. But yeah, I agree with you. He was one of those actors that I've always admired, and I think he does a lot of great work in the past. And some of the movies like Color Out of Space or Mandy, for example,
Right.
I think he's really good in those things.
Yeah.
And sure, he's doing a lot of things for the money because he owes money, I think, to the IRS or whatever, but he takes a lot of work, and every so often, every week there's like a new Nicolas Cage movie. But that's okay.
Yep.
I think you can still do good work, and just do a lot of it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. He's a talented guy, obviously, and he's also been in some movies that I didn't like Ghost Rider. I never did much for me. But the thing that I like the most about Nicolas Cage, I think he's just a giant nerd.
Yes.
Because he is.
Well,
he loves his comic books and his D&D, and his he's a nerd like me, and I appreciate that. And like you said, he's willing to poke fun at himself, which a lot of people won't do that. A lot of people are too serious, and they won't be self-deprecating, and they won't do any of that stuff. But he knows what his I don't use the word brand, but he knows what the Nicolas Cage brand is, and he's willing to skewer it and turn it on its side and turn it on, to make a point and to do a good job. So I appreciate that.
I'm ready to forgive him for ruining a Brian De Palma film, and I don't know if it was his fault or Brian De Palma's fault, but Snake Eyes, he was horrible in that movie, and that movie was just bad. And
dude, Snake Eyes was crap. Come on.
What?
It wasn't just Nicolas Cage's fault. That was
it was an overall bad movie. But his
two people makes a conspiracy. Oh my God, so stupid.
But he was exceptionally bad in that, and I'm like, either he phoned it in or De Palma phoned it in. Probably De Palma, since the whole movie was just terrible. I guess
is it terrible or is it just cheesy fun?
I thought it was cheesy fun, but Nicolas Cage's role, he's just bad in it, and it's maybe he was going for cheesy, but it just didn't work. And so I can forgive him now for that. So I'm ready to accept him.
You're ready to move on?
Yeah.
But you should see Willy's Wonderland. It's great.
Yeah, well,
the other thing I was going to mention, it reminded me when I first saw the trailer, I was like, well, that reminds me of a movie that I saw a long time ago called Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yes.
Well, and there's a reason for that, because one of the guys who was in Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Grant Kramer, is actually a producer of this movie. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Okay.
So
excellent. Okay.
So that's why. And actually, my other Grant Kramer story is I know him a little bit. He was a long ago was a guy who ran an extras casting business. So I used his business to cast extras a bunch of times on movies.
Yeah,
So I
cool.
know Grant a little bit. So it's like, it's funny that he's come this far. He's produced a lot of movies, and he's actually got a part in the movie too. But it's good. The effects are actually pretty good. They obviously did it on a restricted budget,
Yeah.
but it's a funny movie, and I enjoyed it. So I think that people who like sort of horror comedy type stuff and like Nicolas Cage will enjoy it. So, and I
Well,
think you'd enjoy it too.
Everybody go watch this movie then. Go rent it, or buy it from your favorite streaming service if it's available there.
Exactly.
Or if you can safely do it and it's available in a theater, go see it there. But
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't encourage anybody.
all
to
right, don't go to the theater, but get it on the streaming service. But pay some money for it. Let's support people that we know.
But you know what, man? We're gonna get a. Everyone's gonna get a vaccine. We're gonna be fine.
Yeah,
It's all good.
it'll all be
good,
back
man.
to normal.
We'll all be back to quote unquote normal. But what about the kids, man? What's this gonna do to the kids? I don't know. Anyway, so like we said at the head of the show, find the Flickcast at Apple Podcasts, at Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and wherever you find fine podcasts, and ours too.
Yes.
And you can find us on Patreon. And you can find us on the socials. I don't know why I say that. The socials. Anyway, at the Flickcast, and then Joe and I are on Twitter, and at Chris U, and at What Joe Writes. And you can also find the Flickcast on Facebook, even though I don't like Facebook, but we're still there anyway.
Yep. But give us comments, talk to us, interact. We'll
And the Discord thing's coming.
Yep.
And it's all good. So that was a good show. I'm very happy
Yes.
that we got to talk about things. I'm sorry if we had to bore you with a little bit of Joss Whedon and Gina Carano stuff before we got to the meat.
Yeah.
But that's how life is sometimes. We try to keep it, we try to keep it current with whatever. So
Try to keep up with the kids.
try to keep up with the kids. Anyway, so for Joe Dilworth, I am Chris Ulrich. That was the Flickcast. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, everybody.